Well, your family don't like me. This I understand. I don't want to settle down. I'm just a rambling man. I'd rather be out rocking with my good old country band. Yes, I would. But listen, baby, it was great while it lasted. And together we smashed it.
But Shaftesbury Avenue with superior acceleration left them standing. Shaftesbury Avenue has blasted away from Super in pain.
Private Steer's coming at it now. Our Egyptian Rain just in front of Private Steer. Private Steer lunge! What a run!
Racing to Win has closed the margin very quickly, and the odds-on favourite took the lead from Murdergill and Casino Prince, and Hugh Bowman shoots him away. Racing to Win by about 3/4.
Yes, with you. You taught me how to nasty in those naughty high heel shoes. The devil wears.
Hot Danish in front. Clark goes full bore now. She's a neck in front of Melito. Down the outside, Beater's running on, but it's Hot Danish's day today.
By good old country mile, make no mistake, you'll always be on speed dial.
But it's all Hayless with 150 to go. Hinchinbrook runs to second out in the middle of the track. Beautifully rated right in front. He runs the 1400 out and coasts in.
There's only one more thing to do. I know that I can keep it secret.
Atlantic Jewel moving up to Rain Affair. She's got a head in front. She's about a half a length on Rain Affair. Not much in the tank, but she'll get home.
Just for old time's sake, one more time, one more time, one more time. Just for
Over the concluding stages, All Too Hard is thundering up the centre. Is challenging Rain Affair. All Too Hard and Rain Affair and the 3-year-old. All Too Hard beat Rain Affair.
just for old time's sake.
Cascadian, those coming to rain on the party. It's Stefani in front. Cascadian with the big white face right over the top. Cascadian wins the All Eight. Giga Kicks are stunning the run, went up with Zaki. Giga Kick and Zaki 2 lengths away, then the Bandersnatch and Cascadian. But Giga Kick's got a strong kick and he goes home in the group with a big one.
And honor you with children and stay together forever, forever.
And now on PG Podcast Network, it's time for the year-round Carnival with Vince Accardi and your host, Racetrack Ralphy.
One more time indeed with Rock and Rod Stewart. Thanks so much for getting our preview edition. Good Friday and all. Should have started off with saying Happy Easter, shouldn't I? Happy Easter, Vince Accardi.
Yeah, well, it's another great day, isn't it?
Absolutely right.
Yep, thank you.
Glorious weather in Melbourne, but the good thing is, this is what's pretty rare about All-Age Stakes Day. Normally we're turning up and the track can be a bit of a mess after a typically wet Sydney Carnival. Hasn't been the case, so we're going to have some ground we can trust tomorrow, I think.
It's good. This is what we want. It just should be like that all the time.
Exactly. Sydney needs an umbrella. They didn't need to use it this year. But I heard the track manager yesterday saying they got a bit more rain than they expected. We'll start in sort of softish 7 as of Thursday. But you know, good weather predicted. So the question is, if assuming the track gets to about that 4 or 5 range, what do you expect with the rail out 6 metres rather?
Well, we typically got to be 6 to 12 off the fence for the best lanes, Ralphy. This is going to be really big advantage for the on-pace horses. Big advantage. At least for if you're 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 off the fence, you're going to be very, very happy. So it makes it a bit harder for the midfielders and back markers, Ralphie, because it's just a narrow strip. And you can get caught a lot of times when they think they're going up the middle of the track. They're actually in no man's zone.
We keep saying it, the lanes don't move, so it has to be a counter of our thinking, or sort of an anchor of our thinking tomorrow. We'll start off with the first of the Group 1s for the 2-year-olds, the Champagne Stakes. Quite an interesting race. Sis, how are you assessing the speed in the Champagne Stakes for the 2-year-olds? Always lacking that skeletal strength, as you like saying, Vince, over that mile distance.
Yeah, well, Ralphie, it's... I'd like to say we're going to be benchmark maybe -1, but just looking at the few modules here, the indication is we could easily be -3 to 6 through that first split time. So I'm going to take a position that we're going to be in a below average sort of situation, and possibly, well, hopefully not too much slower than -6, but realistically, that's what we could end up with tactically. And that, I don't know who's going to really want to do too much, even though horses like Belzone, they've been up for a while, Ralphie. Could Clark try and bring the speed up to benchmark? It probably wouldn't help his chances, but if he can get away with a sort of soft first half of the race, probably be a bit of an advantage for that little group of lead horses, but they just may not have the ability in this situation to take full advantage of it.
So you've ended up with Within the Law in your most advantage on the early edition. This is Within the Law. It's definitely got a class number there, which is obviously why your early edition have spat it out. The question for you and the puzzle for punters is how will it be able to cope jumping from 1200 to the mile?
Well, usually the pace is the one that finds all this out, Ralphie. And if we, again, it's always this little challenge, Ralphie, about what will it be. But let's just say we're going to crystal ball it and say we're going to be on the number 3 to 6 below benchmark. The way this horse has been closing out over the last few hundred metres, that would be like very good for this horse, because that what would be happening is this horse would be probably travelling 6 to 8 lengths below benchmark. And with the way it closed out last start at 1,200 metres with a plus 4.3, that would be very, very, very good. The hard part is, how do you treat the horse in terms of the campaign? And this is a challenge. I've taken a position, possibly there's another run and maybe there's not, but I feel the 1,600 metres is going to be all right, Ralphie, if it's got another run.
So distance-wise, not a great problem. Then the next two on your most advantage and in the market as well is the horses. They both look set for this, which it's been a good filter this carnival for sure. You know, horses that are there, turn up. Here's your grand final. Let's be with them. First of those is Nepotism. Pretty unlucky first up at big odds, but ran super, and then demolished them at Rose Hill on that Monday meeting. It was on significantly rain-affected ground, and you'd have to say on the map you would envisage back and wide required, which is your starting point. Is that could be a challenge tomorrow?
It could be, Ralphie, absolutely. But the horse demonstrated reasonably good setup last start. I felt like it was a pass mark for ground condition, and I am taking a view. Randwick's a very, very good track for drying regardless, Ralphie. It's a big chance, like you touched on at the beginning, that we could find ourselves on that G4 very close to it. So if you look at that first up run over 1,200 metres, I'm more along the lines of that's sort of a scenario. I feel, again, if the pace isn't there, it's going to be compressed. Tyler Schiller, he can certainly, I think he's in a big emerging rider, isn't he?
Right.
The way he's handling himself. So hopefully he understands that where you need to be in terms of once you get in the home straight and doesn't get caught in, getting caught in the sense that you'd be running down the middle of the track and that'd be against you. But the horse has definitely shown that it can close very strongly, probably less likely if the ground's really affected, because I do feel this horse is better on top of the ground, Ralphie.
So despite winning, you think it's got more ability on top of the ground?
Absolutely, yeah. The driver, the better. Well, you just look at the speed that it produced in that first race start. I mean, that was just excellent, off a nice baseline, 5.8 lengths below benchmark, 9.4 length mid-race squeeze at a first race start, Ralphie. Then that sort of, what's that work out to be? 3.5 above between the 8 and the 4 and 2.9 last 400. Yeah, I feel we definitely haven't seen the best of this horse yet.
Which makes it pretty promising for tomorrow. Yep. And we may as well bracket State Visit in Buffalo. They ran. I'm still rocking in the corner, Vince, at the $16.
Yep.
Narrowly beaten the size Produce State Visit. Buffalo, that you made a real good case for, was a hard closing third. How do these two line up for tomorrow?
Well, again, we look at State Visit. Sort of looks pretty primed in my view in terms of where we're at. That last run, why didn't it sort of quite have that same sort of finish? It was all about race pace, right? they went very, very slow second up and allowed the horse to have just an astonishing finish for a young horse. 5.7 last 400. Yes, it ran third, but the head start was too much. Even the run before that, Ralphy at Canterbury over 12.50, beautiful, close plus 4.9. They're all really good signs for this type of race, and I do feel again it's going to have excellent setup race wise in terms of pace. It's going to allow this horse the opportunity to finish a lot better than what it did last start. And again, if they go really fast, faster than what I'm forecasting right now, that might be a problem for the horse. But I don't think so. I feel that this is a horse that has to be given some sort of a chance in this race. So even though last start, that close wasn't as dynamic, I just felt that it had a lot more to do with going up the 200 metres and the change up in speed from run to run of, over 9 lengths.
So that's Buffalo. What about State Visit? How does it compare?
Sorry, that was State Visit.
Oh, that was State Visit,
yep,
right. So Buffalo third and was sort of hard closing. And like I said, you made a case for it in the size produce that was also good odds on the day.
Yeah, and this is another runner, Ralphie, where it is really in the second prep, isn't it?
Yeah.
Which is always better if you're doing everything on the first prep. You can't deny what it did. There's 2 starts back at New Zealand, at Newcastle, Ralphie, plus 7 last 400 off that 1,200 metre race in an excellent race shape. Again, last start, Randwick, 1,400 metres. Really, when you look at this, getting to almost benchmark on that sort of setup, could this horse now genuinely be right at its top? And maybe we're going to see the best of the horse.
So, quaddy wise, you're pretty much saying that that there are several chances for those who take them. I know you don't.
Yeah, this is. I don't feel it's very easy race, Ralphie. Myself personally, I feel it's difficult, and I wouldn't even dismiss the 10 in this race here. One Tommy Berry's on.
Tupacara on the quick backup.
Yeah, we'll have a look what it did last start. I know it was crazy slow speed, but you see, this is what can happen, right? It handled itself so well and ran second. I don't believe it was a fluke, Ralphie. I thought it was. It had plenty of merit and shouldn't be dismissed at a long odds.
All right, one to include there in the all age stakes. This is a cracking race here. It's often can be a bit tricky because who's the one set for it? Who's got another grand final to come? And that's probably the case with a lot of these. In that they've won Group 1s on the way through, but gee, there's some good horses amongst them. How are you seeing the pace unfold in this race?
This is a good race, isn't it, Ralphie?
Yeah, it's a cracker.
Yeah, it is. This is really, really. Can't believe how they've been able to assemble this sort of a field. It's fantastic. Pressure-wise, whilst there's not a lot of horses going forward, but there's still a setup where the speed's going to be on, Ralphie. I just feel that when I look at the various sort of modules that I've got here, the lowest I could pin it is like +1. I doubt we can go much slower than that. Maybe, of course, if the track doesn't dry as well as what I'm expecting, then possibly we might be inside that line. But my view is we're definitely baseline slowest pace is going to be around +1, with the possibility of being maybe as fast as +4. So it is going to set it up. This shouldn't really disadvantage the on-pace runners unless they overextend beyond that sort of +3, 4 range. Then it might become very challenging. It does help the midfielders, but it's going to be all lane targeted. You will have to target those lanes to engineer victory.
So it's more the pinch your way into the race rather than that sort of traditional Randwick out wide, because, of course, the rail is out 6 metres. So with all that in mind, let's start with Briasa. I'm going to say I'll punch it home pretty hard, Vince, in the TJ Smith. And that Rosehill run said you couldn't have done much more under the way that track was playing on the day when it ran fourth. So the question is this. Was that its peak, or was that its display of saying, you know what, I'm a serious ongoing Group 1 horse from here? Because I can't help thinking Team Hawks, they don't give him another run for the sake of it. They put him in the paddock if they're not happy. Well, this horse was only second up when he did that. So is there a chance that he's still got a launch to come?
Well, the way Tyler's riding, if he if last start's any indication about where they can position the horse, it could be in that golden stalking line.
Yep.
And, that doesn't mean you're going to be 6 wide either, does it, Ralphy? It means you're going to be in a beautiful spot. High probability with some sort of cover, and you might be just a couple off the fence. So it'll be like the middle of the track when you move 3 or 4 off the fence to, run down the leaders. And this is what it looks like. And the way it finished that last start, Ralphie, a repeat of that, how will the others catch it?
Oh, I got to say,
how will they catch it?
My initial thoughts were Jimmy Star 1400. They're not gonna hold you out, and then out it comes. Beautiful barrier for Briasa. The rail's out 6 meters. All of a sudden, you think, gee, even with Jimmy Star's big close, he wouldn't want to be conceding much to Briasa because Briasa's still going to have a big close and be in front of him.
Yeah. So what I see is that Jimmy Star is definitely going to have to give it probably a 4-length head start.
Yep.
Maybe a bit more. Maybe not the case with broadsiding because we've seen J-Max got a lot of tactics about him.
Oh, yeah.
So he would be very acutely aware he wouldn't want to be giving too much of a head start to Briasa. But other than that, no, I don't feel anyone's going to have the ability to be able to push, especially if there's pace, to be able to push like a plus 10 last 400 and make up the difference that you're going to need to be able to close out a horse like Briasa, who does get the big handicap advantage in terms of position in running by the time they get inside that last sort of 500 or 600 metres.
So a lot of these came through the TJ, but here on your most advantaged chart, early edition, broadsiding's sitting there, and there's a great saying of first heard it from Mark Lambourne: no speed, no talent. So this is a horse who's drawn well for J-Mac. Surely he's just going to say, no, I want you close enough to find out if you're good enough on the day.
Yeah, and I feel the horse is good enough to run big. The challenge that this horse will have, no matter how you look at it tomorrow, is, first of all, yes, it is 28 days between runs, and we're going to peel ourselves back from 2,000 to 1,400. That's never easy, Ralphie, even when you have 28 days. And I guess it's all about ensuring you've got that speed. But let's take the position that from this stable, they're very, very good tacticians, Ralphie, and we're going to take the position that they've been able to manage that process. And then when you look at the overarching sort of last 400, 600, 800 metres of this horse, he cannot afford to give more than a length head start to Briasa. He just can't, because he's actually not a bigger closer. So what's he going to do? And they would be praying for not a lot of pace, but even if that was the case, it doesn't change anything. It just means that you might be able to be more comfortable through the first half of the race, but you still will have the challenge. How do you get past Briasa over the last 400 metres? It's highly unlikely you're going to be in front of it, getting to that point. So I'm respecting the class and everything, Ralphie. I'm taking a position, all right, you're going to handle this transition back. I don't personally like it, especially from a strategic betting position, even if you would, let's say, the classiest horse in the field and you're up against, let's say the emerging equal to you, the setup doesn't look good for me. But I'll pay respect, but I just don't find a scenario where you beat it, where you beat Briasa with this horse.
Yes, and that ultimately I can work out why they're doing it, because it's a colt.
Right.
If it beats the open age, looking at stallion profile, it'll be just chef's kiss for it. But
okay.
That's the challenge. 2,000 back to 1,400 against a really good horse like Briasa. Magic Time won this race last year under a different circumstance and very wet ground. At worst, it'll get just ground with a little bit out of it, but she is just a beauty. And does she get a chance to show her A game tomorrow?
Yeah, I feel for myself, I've really gotten this horse right this campaign. In other words, by more or less steering away from it. Yes, I'm not going to deny the way the horse was first up. When you look at that first up from a distance, you say, goodness me, 14 lengths below benchmark, comes home with this booming plus 10.4, and then even the run at Randwick, when it produced that plus 6.9, you'd say, all right, well, if you happen to get away with a better than, standard sort of first section, and that's run a little bit softer. In other words, let's say Jordan was able to go to the front and anchor them all down to go slowly, he probably would be very happy, because I feel that that's the only possibility where you would be some sort of a chance. You've got to find this really slow pace, because if you take away that and inject speed, all right, that Randwick run at 1,300 metres, what are the chances that horse is going to run at that pace to produce that 6.9? But if it did do that, then it would mean that Briasa will have to find something, because on a 6.9 close versus 6, and I am looking at everything like this, Ralphie, about this last 400 metres and who's got the grit, whether we're running really fast, not so fast, who's got the grit. So I just see that Magic Time's best chance is to do what I would consider to be almost the unthinkable, and that's to really cave in that pace and slow it right down. I don't believe that Jordan Childs is good enough to do that, Ralphie. To be able to go to a front position and everybody do the pipe and say, no, just follow me, boys. I just don't think that's going to happen.
No, not in Sydney.
Yeah. So therefore, you're going to be exposed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Jolly Star, we should also touch on now. Jolly Star, it was pretty easy watching the Newmarket. It was just great fun. She smashed him. The robots jumped on. Damien Lane in that. I remember in that chopper shot after 200 metres. You go, oh my goodness, how's he going to lose from here? And he didn't. Last start though, different circumstance against a couple of these, such as Browser, of course, and Jimmy Star. Went to the rails, was stuck there. Damien said he didn't want to take the run, but had to. So that was the slow lane on the day. Didn't want to be there. He was, she was. What's her chances now of sort of rebounding to that Newmarket level? And will that Newmarket level even be good enough against the likes of Browser?
Well, I want to ask you this question first, Ralph, because it's going to help me, really solidify my views. And nothing better than, partner in crime there to, bounce the ball off. What's your view for this horse's best distance?
I think 1,200's even pace. Yeah. So fast pace 1,400 worries me if the Bunsen burners are on.
And when there's been pressure, now I know if we look at that Caulfield victory, going all the way back, to 23, where it went +3 first section at a mile, and of course very soft last 400 metres. Get it. It's hard up on the pace. They're running like 4.5 above benchmark, which is somewhere where I'm expecting the pace to be, right? Realistically, +1 to 4 range. The horse was able to win at a mile with a -4.3. You will not be able to do that tomorrow and win with that sort of setup. There's no way. But, okay, I'm being realistic. I don't feel Zach will have to really travel at that pace. So then I look at the next positioning and saying, all right, what about that? And I have to go to 23 form, Ralphie, right? What about the run at Flemington, the 7th of the 11th? Going 3.6 lengths below benchmark, not doing anything in the middle, still travelling 1.6 below, closes out with a 5.3. And I thought about this and said, okay, let's say you run to that, you engineer that setup. All right, where will you be? You'll be about 7 off him. Browse is going to be 4 in front. Good luck. This is what I'm thinking on the chessboard, Ralphie, sure. Right? And then I go, all right, what about that other run at Randwick in October? Maybe, because I'm looking at, how can it produce this booming finish? Because we know this horse has got a big finish on it, right? And that day it was 5.9 below benchmark and it produced a +5. That would push you in even further back. No good. So now, if I go to more recent times and say, okay, here we are. We've got 8th of the 3rd, Flemington 25, a 4.9 last 400, unbelievable, off what I consider to be a decent speed, -1.1. Now, at -1.1, this horse will be anywhere between 2 at best. This is going the horse 2 lengths from the leader to somewhere around 5 or 6. Now, if it runs exactly to the -1.1, it could be 5-6 lengths off him. That's still no good. The chances of the other run happening from the 15th to the 2nd, where the horse went 14.2 lengths below benchmark and then stormed home with a +9.1, is 0. Well, I'm saying 0. I don't see this horse travelling 17, 18 lengths below benchmark tomorrow and have the possibility. And this just then brings me back to exactly why I asked you the question in the beginning, where do we think this horse's best distance is? I have to be with you, Ralphie, that I feel the best distance is shorter. Because it is capable, but I've also seen this horse, when there's pressure and there's pressure in the middle, very bad for this horse. It's very negative. He's got that chink, and I don't know if they're going to be able to overcome that at the moment. We might need another preparation. I don't know. But I don't feel very comfortable about this horse having that scenario where it can run down Briasa unless, the unthinkable happens and Briasa happens to be behind them all.
Just one I want to ask you about for the multis.
Yep.
I like finding those, Vince. Belclair, you look at this IVR profile on your early edition. That was a real performance. This track, this distance, it was 2 real performances. One was at Rose Hill, the other one at Randwick. When it got to the front, it just highballed. Now, if we're saying it's leader advantage tomorrow, and it's Bjorn Baker after a trip to New Zealand, not ideal, but it started a favourite for a reason, that railway. Okay, it was over the top by then. Seemed like a very good trial. Is there any chance that this is one of those 6-week bounce series?
Well, here's the interesting thing. If you just purely look off the New Zealand run, you'd have it immediately in the bin, immediately. 5.7 below benchmark last start in New Zealand, not going to cut it. Even the ranking on the day around 43, not good. The run before that, no different at a mile, minus 7.5. But of course, if you go back and you look at the earlier runs back in November, October, wow, that's a very different discussion, right? 3.2 above 3. Well, you can be competitive, especially because you're going to be in front of Briasa, right? All things being equal. And then I said, let me go and have a look at the trial, because I felt this was going to be important, that trial, Ralphie. And has Bjorn potentially made a mistake? So this is, I'm not, we know how good Bjorn is. He's fantastic, right? And he has an unbelievable capability with some horses to really bring the very, very best out of them under a wide range of scenarios. But this one was really baffling. They trialled this horse in the 4th, and the horse ran virtually benchmark.
That's what I'm saying. It was
right.
big.
Now, on that, you would say dangerous. So, are we looking at, off the 42 days, which was less than to that trial, was that, the bounce theory and getting the peak in the trial?
Could have left it out there.
That's what I'm scared of.
Yeah.
That's it. I'm scared of that. Now, if that isn't the case, then I'm saying I do expect a huge reversal, but with the shape and the pattern, I feel that's going to be the biggest challenge for the horse, that trial might work against you.
Just quickly, just give us one quick word about Grail Seeker. How does its New Zealand profile stack up with here?
Yeah. There's a run in recent times. We're going to go back to September, where it produced a 0.9 above benchmark, and that was actually a pretty solid run. It was the best performance of the day. So if I'm looking purely off that line, New Zealand have a tendency to have a lot softer wet grounds, but in this case, we really did have firm ground. But this horse demonstrated what it's capable of doing when it is firm ground. It's very, very strong. Last start, though, the performance was 4.8 lengths below benchmark. And even when I apply the race matrix, it sort of indicates it's probably about 4.3 below. I don't like that, but I have to sit back and say, well, hang on, that was second up, Ralphie.
Yeah.
The huge squeeze in the middle from 4.8 below to plus 7.3 and then completely tanking out the last 200 does sort of create a massive signal that it was well short of where it needed to be effective in that race. So I did ask myself the question, well, you're a big chance of at least breaking benchmark. This is a horse, Ralphie, that does have the capability of putting in a big 400-metre sprint that is better than plus 6. But, again, I'm going to preface it with it needs the softer the tempo, the better. I don't know if you're going to get that tomorrow, Ralphie.
It sounds like we'll talk business tomorrow, but it sounds
Yep.
like you're going to need convincing to not be with Briasa.
Yeah. Good luck, and I know, the few people are talking about some horses that might be airborne, and they'll need to be.
Right. Okay, we'll talk business then. Race 9, the Hallmark Stakes, over 1,200 metres there. Again, very interesting race, and a few of these come through matching against each other in Marzu, Ostraka and Dragonstone. And Jetabil brings some different form from much stronger races. So how are you seeing the pace for this race, setting up race 9?
I just feel it's going to be good tempo. And for me, good tempo, Ralphie, is maybe, benchmark -1, +1, +2. That's beautiful, just beautiful. So when I went through the various scenarios, I'd say the quickest I could get the race is about +1.5. Is there any chance of a bit quicker than that? I'd say unlikely, because even when I look at some of the runners out wide, what are they going to do? They're not going to really have any major impact on, really creating a real high octane speed, unless someone's got a deliberate strategy that their view is to go out running and try and crush the field, which would work, terribly against them, right? So I'm going to be saying orderly, and every horse is going to get their chance if you're good enough.
So your starting point here is Ostraka. Now, started off in the 2 Melbourne Elite races, the Oakley Plate and the Newmarket. Last start, got picked off late. I would say I'd love to know how positive Jason Collett's going to be given that barrier circumstance. If he's going to be positive, will there be a spot for him?
Well, there's a bit of traffic in the middle. No traffic's out the back, of course. But pressing yourself a little bit forward is going to be really your only option. And why not? Why not?
Yes.
Why not go forward into I'm not saying a dominant position, but come across and be in a forward running line. So let's see a couple of scenarios. We've got to go back to Eagle Farm when the race was 3.5 above, which I am not expecting that speed, Ralphie. The horse went plus 2.3 to get itself in a lethal position and got victory. And now, mind you, I feel this horse is so much better than that. And I just feel when I look at the scenario tomorrow, if they do go forward, of course, if they go back, it's always going to be a challenge, Ralphie, no matter what, and I would be pretty frustrated. Like if I really felt we're going back, I would have to change my position of thought. But if they can come across and be in a forward position, and hopefully the Annabelle Neasham gives them the right incentive to ensure that happens, then this will be this horse will have the race at its mercy. It'll be up to the horse to demonstrate whether it's going to be beaten or not, because this is where this horse is at ready to peak, Ralphie. And I just feel that no matter what they do, as long as they go forward, they're going to be a very hard horse to beat.
There's 2 Annabelle Neasham stables, isn't there? There's the ones that wound up to like a spinning top and they win first up and often at odds. And this horse was probably the case last year off that short break between Eagle Farm, where sometimes she's more than happy to let them build into a prep. And even though this horse started in the big races, everything sort of points that this horse is trending upwards.
Yeah, and this is one of the things that I love about the Annabelle Neasham stable is how she's been able to make that evolution. Because in the earlier days, I really felt that she didn't have that armour. Not that she didn't have the capability, but she was really having this strategy about having them really finely tuned and bang out the gates. Let's turn up and put in, sensational performances first up. And then there's really not much left after that. Whereas we've seen it now for a good year, I reckon, where she's been taking her time and building, and this is exactly right. And it might be a little bit circumstantial also with this horse because didn't always get the right setup in terms of barriers. But now, here we are, Ralphie. And I don't feel there's too many. I wouldn't really like a really wet track for this horse. Like if for whatever reason this didn't dry, I'd be anti because I feel this horse is best. Even though it's won on wet ground, the WTIs doesn't give you the rubber stamp of approval saying like I'm a dominant horse that loves the wet ground. This is a dominant horse that likes dry ground. And I reckon tomorrow we could see this horse smashing through the PBs. And I feel it sits rock solid plus 1.5 to 2 horse without a ceiling last campaign. And maybe we're going to go straight past that. Now, what happens if it did do that? What happens if it runs plus 2 or better? What would this is what I said to myself. What does that mean? It means I'm going to collect a lot of money.
So the thing is, it's $5.50. I know you don't do the odds before you you have a look. The two favourites for the race, or maybe 3 if you like. Marzu around about $4. It is going to get the right run. It hasn't won it for a year. It was this race last year, but as I said, as with Magic Time, that was on very wet ground. General Salute, it'll be getting back. It's airborne, but it'll be getting back. And Dragonstone, that makes up the others amongst the favourites. So, in a nutshell, how are you seeing those horses line up?
Well, I've got to respect Marzu, 100%. Have to respect it. And if it's a little bit of sting in the ground still there, and we're running S5, S6 and we didn't get to the drying track, this would probably help the horse, in my view. The way the horse is set up, there's a clear line there. Second up, yes, it was over 1,000 metres, but it was a big indicator, plus 1.2, very strong finish. We did see a negative bounce last start. And in my view, fair enough. It didn't deliver through that first split time and never really was in a position, particularly the way the race was set up, to do much more than that. So I see a big rebound coming as well for this horse. And the 1,200 metres is not going to be obviously a disadvantage, Ralphy. I just feel that the big thing for this horse is, are you really going to get the right ground conditions to be super effective? I'm not going to sit here and say the horse can't handle dry track, Ralphie, but I feel that there's a 1 length variation potentially on the horse. But on its day, it's good enough to run in the mid-twos, and I do believe this will be Straka's biggest threat.
The other questions on a horse like General Salute, and let's throw in Jetabil as well, they almost have to concede ground, don't they? Which probably, as we've outlined, won't be ideal tomorrow.
Well, I feel that Brad Widdup's got this wrong. You have a look at where this is with Jetabil. This is a very good horse. Got a lot of talent, Ralphie. But unfortunately, what the sad part is this, that when you have a horse that's got plenty of potential, like particularly with what we've been seeing out of Jetabil this campaign, and there's been some sensational runs. Sure, probably more favoured over, in terms of its peak, 1,000 metres, but even at 1,200, plenty of respect. But it's been up too long, Ralphie. And I just feel this is big, big negative. And tomorrow, they're probably going to get punished by it, unfortunately. This sort of pattern from this stable, I don't know how I don't believe they're going to be good enough to win. Like if you went to the bush, out really wide, you could probably get away with it, but you're not going to get away with this setup here in town. No way. You're up against all the A-grade trainers. It doesn't work, Ralphie. So I'm taking a negative set against that horse.
And General Salute?
General Salute, well, long break, 2 runs. This stable's been a bit interesting. They used to be powerhouse. Ryan, for most of his life, was always a powerhouse, mad fresh, super fast first up. I sort of felt that, like on the first up run off a long break, we were seeing that again, right? And that was at 1,200 metres. This is a horse that puts itself there if that ground condition's going to be ugly tomorrow. Now, what's your chances of potentially seeing a setup where it's going to be really soft? Are we going to have that?
I just can't see it with this weather.
No, I can't either. And then, yes, there was a bit of a negative bounce from first up to second up. I feel on the class side of it, that's where it might fall short. And whilst I do like horses that have long breaks, I don't love it that much when they're that far off, virtually a year off. Just felt for me that Ryan would have had this horse very well screwed down. He wouldn't have said, we're just going to build you through. Because if he was going to build this horse through the campaign, we would not be seeing what we've seen first up at Kembla Grange. No way. Where the horse is going to storm home with a plus 5.0 off a near benchmark first section. Not a possibility. So that, for me, was an indicator that he was back to his plans, old plans, that, haven't wound up. Yeah.
Sounds like you're pretty happy with Ostraka. We'll talk business tomorrow. Last leg of the quaddie, it's a benchmark 99, so it's it's borderline. It's a very high handicap, is what I'm saying, and it's a big open field. Are you seeing there's an opportunity here with I'm in to win?
Yeah. So what's a benchmark 99? Is that does that mean like when you get to 100, there's no more?
That's right, and then you just open handicap. Yeah.
Oh, so then just becomes open.
Yep. So it's borderline open. Anyway, it's as high as it can go without being open.
That's very interesting. Yeah. Okay, well, I don't look at those things anymore, Ralphie. So
I know.
I was just thinking 99. Wow, I didn't know they did that. I thought it was like 70 or something. But yeah, that's how far out I am. I shouldn't think that way. But
Actually, you know what? It's benchmark 100 because I just realised my database doesn't recognise 100, so that's why they put 99 there. So it's benchmark 100.
Okay, got it.
Well,
big field, interesting. That sort of does create a little bit of scenarios for tempo, but this is what freaked me out about the race. Where is the tempo? In a big field, who's really going to be bullish to own the front, and what pace are we going to be? Who wants the front? So the first thing that I thought about was, okay, well, my instant reaction is I'm in to win is going to be the runner, right, with Timmy Clark, with possibly Cool Jake. Questionable whether, don't know what to do with Tabby Time. He could have a scenario we could push forward with J-Mac, but because he's drawn in what I consider to be perfect, J-Mac, when he gets a perfect gate, maybe he knows his horse can go up to near the speed and be up the front, but he doesn't tend to do that when he's drawn perfect. He tends to try and use that to his advantage in conserving energy and doesn't have to burn any additional fuel. And he might allow the others to do that first layer and he'll just park himself behind that first pack. That's the way I'm looking at it, because I can't see where the pressure is, because I do feel I'm into wins a big chance of going forward, drawn well, Cool Jake drawn well. So the horses that are drawn wider, okay, Racetrack, no choice. Townsend, no choice. So they're the horses that are going to create the pace, right? To try and ultimately determine what pace will we really be running at. So I look at Townsend, and we've got to move away, of course, from what happens at 2,000 metres, and the horse is first up. Now we know with the Waterhouse team, and I'm saying to myself, okay, you benchmark. That's been very, very realistic benchmark. And so, okay, well, that's not a lot, but that's probably enough to push you forward and put you in a really, really nice position of early speed. And then Racetrack, which was the other runner that I felt like really it's drawn horrendously poor, has to just do one thing, and that's come across, right? Because I just don't know what else you can do. And I look at the rider and say, okay, fair enough. And this is also first up with Ma, and what I see is like -1, Ralphie. So I look at myself and say, okay, well, if these horses come across, if they're forced to go any faster, they're going to completely blow up their chances. And maybe this isn't their target. Maybe their targets for both horses are in Queensland.